The Landsknechts were some of the most colorful, fearless, and infamous soldiers of the late medieval period, operating mainly between the late 15th and mid 17th centuries. Known for their flamboyant attire, ruthless demeanor, and relentless pursuit of wealth, these mercenaries became a defining force in European warfare. They were initially raised by Maximilian I of the Holy Roman Empire in an effort to counteract the Swiss mercenary dominance. The Landsknechts would eventually prove to be pivotal in shaping early modern European military history. They were both revered and reviled, revered for their discipline and battle prowess, and reviled for their penchant for looting and destruction. In the late 15th century, the Swiss had established themselves as the leading mercenary power in Europe. The Swiss Confederacy decisively defeated Charles the Bold's Burgundians in a series of key battles during the Burgundian Wars. One of the most significant confrontations was the Battle of Grandson in 1476, where Swiss forces clashed with the army of Charles the Bold. Despite being outnumbered, with Charles commanding around 20,000 men and the Swiss forces numbering quite a bit less, the Swiss infantry overwhelmed the Burgundians. The Swiss utilized their hallmark tactic, tight pike formations, known as a hedgehog phalanx, which had proven devastating on battlefields across Europe. These formations, while lacking cavalry, were highly effective in neutralizing enemy forces, including Charles's renowned mounted knights. Charles the Bold, undeterred, sought revenge at the Battle of Morat later that year. However, the Swiss once again demonstrated superior strategy and unity. Despite fierce resistance, the Swiss pike formations routed Charles's troops, who suffered heavy losses. This series of defeats not only weakened Burgundy's military power, but also cemented the reputation of the Swiss as Europe's premier mercenary force. Ultimately, the Swiss Confederacy, together with the Duchy of Lorraine, delivered the final blow to both the Duchy of Burgundy and Charles the Bold at the Battle of Nancy in 1477. The future Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I would go on to marry Charles the Bold's daughter in the same year and became extremely concerned about Swiss military might. Maximilian knew that to counter them, he needed an equivalent force, an adaptable, disciplined, and affordable infantry. Thus, in 1487, he laid the foundation for what would become the Landsknechts, molding them based on the Swiss model, but with certain distinct modifications to their organization. Unlike the Swiss, who were typically bound by rigid cantonal loyalties, the Landsknechts were recruited from a wide range of German-speaking areas. This diversity was reflected in their name, with Landsknecht roughly translating to servant of the land. Though initially composed mainly of German recruits, their ranks eventually grew to include soldiers from other parts of Europe who were drawn to the prospect of wealth and adventure. That said, the primary character of these mercenaries would always remain overwhelmingly German in nature. The Landsknechts were known not just for their skill on the battlefield, but also for their unique style and organization. Their appearance was one of the most distinctive features. They wore elaborate and brightly colored clothing, which symbolized their free-spirited and rebellious attitude. This style was meant to intimidate enemies and demonstrate the soldiers' prosperity. The Landsknecht's audacious clothing was a stark contrast to the drab uniforms of other contemporary military units, and this look became synonymous with their identity. Their organization was a mix of strict hierarchy and democratic tendencies. Their first and most famous leader was Georg von Frundsberg, who co-founded the Landsknechts, along with future Emperor Maximilian. Von Frundsberg was known for enforcing strict discipline, and was also respected by his men for his legendary physical prowess. Commanders were called captains and led the units in battle. However, other decisions were often made collectively. with soldiers having a say in matters such as wages and plunder distribution. Each company had a banner that represented their group, and soldiers rallied around these flags in battle. Despite being known as money-hungry and ruthless, the Landsknechts were renowned for their loyalty to their commanders and comrades. However, their loyalty to their employers was much more malleable and dictated by the prospect of monetary reward rather than any particular ideological commitment. Life as a Landsknecht was far from easy. It was often brutal and filled with constant danger. These soldiers were mercenaries, meaning their lives were dictated by the availability of employment. Despite harsh conditions, they developed a strong camaraderie among themselves, bound by a shared code of conduct. They were known for their rebellious streak. Landsknechts frequently clashed with local authorities and were notorious for their indulgence in drinking, gambling, and brawling. They were recruited from most walks of life, ranging from peasants to minor nobility, with a common motivation towards loot and adventure. The only groups which seem to have been entirely absent from their ranks are higher nobility. Though given they were both infantry and mercenaries, this shouldn't come as a surprise. Training was practical and focused on the use of weapons like pikes, halberds, and arquebuses, which were common on European battlefields at the time. Landsknecht's camp followers, known as the Tross, auf Deutsch, were essential to the operation of these mercenary armies during the 15th and 16th centuries. The Tross included wives, children, and various tradespeople who provided crucial services like cooking, mending clothing, and setting up campsites. Another significant source of camp followers were what I will euphemistically call the entertainment for these men. Discipline was strict, with a specific officer tasked with managing the behavior of the camp followers. Despite their vital roles, many of these followers often endured harsh treatment, existing on the fringes of military life while supporting the Landsknecht's campaigns. In combat, the Landsknechts were formidable. They adopted many of the tactics used by the Swiss, but also adapted and evolved these methods to suit their own needs. The backbone of a Landsknecht regiment was the pike square. These were large formations of soldiers wielding 18-foot-long pikes that could effectively fend off cavalry charges and hold ground against infantry. They also used halberds, a combination of spear and battle axe, which were effective in close combat situations. The Landsknechts were also early adopters of firearms, incorporating arquebusiers into their ranks, which made them a versatile force on the battlefield. Another distinctive aspect of Landsknecht tactics was the use of Doppelsöldner, elite soldiers who were paid double the regular wage. They fought in the most dangerous positions, often wielding two-handed swords called Zweihänder. These swords were used to cut through the pikes of enemy formations, creating gaps for their comrades to exploit. The Doppelsöldner were the elite of the Landsknechts, willing to take on the riskiest roles in battle, and their presence on the front lines was crucial for breaking through enemy defenses. Notably, the Zweihänder has become strongly associated with these mercenaries, even though most Landsknechts would never be trained in the use of one. Landsknechts, regardless of their primary weapon training, also generally carried a short sword for extremely close quarters combat. The most famous of these that is associated with these mercenaries is the Katzbalger. However, these were by no means universally carried by Landsknechts. Notably, as the 16th century went on, the nature of war changed, with close quarters combat becoming a rarity. Pikemen and other similar soldiers were gradually replaced with more and more men with arquebuses and later muskets. The Landsknechts participated in numerous significant conflicts throughout Europe, cementing their reputation as one of the premier mercenary forces of their time. They played a major role in the Italian wars of the late 15th and 16th century, where they often found themselves fighting against the very Swiss mercenaries they were modeled after. These conflicts were marked by intense rivalry and brutal combat, with both sides striving to prove their superiority as a showcase to potential employers. The Landsknechts also served in the armies of Charles V during the Wars of the Holy League and the sack of Rome in 1527. During the sack, the Landsknechts, many of whom were Protestant, took part in the looting and destruction of the city, furthering their fearsome reputation across Europe. Notably, the sack of Rome was conducted by mutinous Landsknechts, alongside professional Spanish soldiers. This mutinous behavior and brutal destruction of Rome may have enhanced the fear associated with the Landsknechts, but it also made them a liability to any potential employer. After all, the worst reputation a mercenary company can have is disloyalty towards those who pay them. The German Peasants' War saw widespread uprisings across the Holy Roman Empire. Most Landsknechts remained loyal to their employers, the nobility and princes, who sought to suppress the revolts. The mercenaries were deployed to quell the uprisings, handling the peasants with a brutal iron fist. During the 1529 Siege of Vienna by the Ottoman Empire, Landsknechts were part of the forces defending the city. Their experience and discipline were vital in resisting the siege, contributing to the eventual withdrawal of Ottoman forces. This event marked a significant moment in European history, halting the Ottoman advance into Central Europe. This event also arguably marks the high watermark for the mercenary company, as a number of things were about to change. The decline of the Landsknechts began in the mid-16th century, as the nature of warfare started to change. Advances in military technology, such as more efficient firearms and artillery, were one factor. Another factor was the rise of professional standing armies funded by increasingly centralized states, which in turn significantly reduced the demand for traditional mercenary units. Additionally, the economic instability of the time made it difficult for rulers to continue funding large mercenary contingents, leading to fewer opportunities for employment. Further, the Landsknecht's reputation had in many ways gone sour after the sack of Rome. It's speculated that potential employers were concerned about the somewhat democratic nature of Landsknecht's companies. Others have speculated that the Reformation decreased any potential cohesion between Landsknechts, making them less effective and leading to problems with recruitment. Germany was left divided upon religious lines by the Reformation, with large portions of the south and west of the country retaining adherence to Catholicism. On the other hand, the northern and eastern parts of Germany generally became Protestant. Thus, one of the advantages of the Landsknechts was that they came from all over Germany, and their loyalty was to their unit rather than their homeland. This advantage was, of course, shattered by adding this new religious division within units. This factor was further complicated by the fact that the wars they were called upon to fight in were largely sectarian in nature from the early mid-16th century onwards. Another factor that needs to be mentioned is, of course, the rise of the most dominant military unit of the 16th and 17th centuries, the Spanish tercio. The Spanish tercios emerged as a dominant military force in the early 16th century, fundamentally shifting the balance of power in Europe. Notably, given that the Habsburgs ruled Spain, Austria, and the Holy Roman Empire, the Landsknechts were in direct competition with these highly professional soldiers. Originating from reforms during Spain's campaigns in Italy, these units combined pike, sword, and arquebus, and later musket tactics, creating a versatile and resilient force. By integrating these elements, the tercios offered a balance between ranged firepower and close quarters defense, proving highly effective against both cavalry and infantry assaults. Their flexibility, particularly their use of rotating volley fire from arquebusiers protected by pikemen, gave them an edge over the more rigid formations used by the Landsknechts. While the Landsknechts were highly regarded for their discipline and shock combat effectiveness, they struggled to adapt as firearm technology advanced. The Spanish, however, embraced these innovations, incorporating muskets and arquebuses, which extended their firing range and allowed for sustained, organized volleys. And as I briefly mentioned before, the tercios were professional soldiers who adhered to a rigid hierarchy rather than a semi-democratic mercenary band structure. By the mid-16th century, the Spanish tercios had effectively outmaneuvered and diminished the relevance of the Landsknechts in every aspect. Despite their decline, the legacy of the Landsknechts lived on. They, along with the Swiss, were instrumental in transforming infantry into a dominant force on European battlefields. This influence helped to shift the focus away from the heavily armored knights, who had previously been the mainstay of medieval armies. Their use of mixed pike and firearm formations influenced the development of early modern military tactics. Further, their flamboyant style left an indelible mark on the popular image of Renaissance-era mercenaries, with Landsknechts being one of the most recognizable units in all of history. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell and turn on notifications. Make sure to check out my channel for other history content, including an Ancient Civilizations Iceberg series, which is now up to 2 hours. Also, be sure to check out my main channel, Lazy Chill Zone, where I deal with unsolved mysteries, true crime, the occult, mythology, and religion, and more. Also, feel free to include recommendations for topics you'd like to see me cover in the comments below.